Hey everyone, and welcome to Connecting the Dots for week 3. This week we talked about tracking. So for me, I connected the dots kind of as a game. So hopefully I didn't go too far in my creativity, but this is how I conceptualize what we learned this week. So I did create a fact or fiction tracking edition. So as you can see, there is two lines. One is for good students and one is for bad students. And that's essentially how tracking works, with a little bit more of grouping inside of it, maybe like low high achievers, or high achievers who don't take all AP courses. But what was really important about tracking was that it does actually put students on two different tracks for where they will end up in life. And so for that reason, I thought tracking was actually one of the most important tools that can be used or done away with, actually. So here I have two columns. One is for the good student and one is for the bad student. Neither one of those things are true, so I have them in red. And as you go down the list, you can see that I kind of contrast some of the misconceptions and some of the actualities. So for me, I would say that how I understood it, tracking has allows the high achieving students or the good students more AP classes, more funding, more college readiness. The interesting thing is that both good students and bad students are segregated. So there is a high level of segregation that's needed if we continue to use tracking in our educational system. Also, good students tend to be more white, not because white students are better, but because that's the nature of tracking. And I would say that's actually the premise for tracking, to make sure that certain groups of people, based on the color of their skin, are able to have better opportunities in life. Because as you can see, bad students, I did put that they are black, but in like as a fallacy, but also black that they're true, because most of the bad students are black students. And when I say black, I actually mean all people of color. And so I kind of contrasted it that way, to look at how the myths and the truths about tracking kind of go together, but people tend to think that everything that's said about tracking is true, and that it should be followed in that sense. So for me, I said, hey, you guessed it, tracking is no good for academic success. And we learned that through some of the reports and some of the videos that we watch, just about the fact that tracking does not close the achievement gap, and it doesn't really offer any opportunity for an improvement in academic success for either the high achievers or the low achievers. And for me, I have here school to prison pipeline, because I really do feel like for tracking, one of the tracks is definitely putting people into prison. And it was also talked about the economic value of tracking, right? Like, which job or place in society do we track our students to be on? So you guessed it, tracking is no good for academic success. So what is? And for me, I would say Oprah style funding. That's a term I took from one of the papers we read, meaning every school gets funded. And that also is like wiping out the educational debt. And so when we consider the theory of educational debt, we consider, how do we restore our faith for our wrongdoings? The debt being the debt that's owed to society. And then also, how do we close the wage gap? How do we make it so that education really does create the society that we say we want to live in? And then just restoring social capital. And those for me were some of the most important reasons to take tracking and all negative methods out of the schooling system, because it really will assist us in creating this utopian society, or at least this equitable society. So here I just have everybody's happy and does better without tracking, because everybody is happy and does do better without tracking. For me, one of the hardest things to accept about tracking is the inherent racism in it, right? If tracking wasn't coupled with white supremacy, I guess it possibly could be done well. But in my experience, mixed classrooms and mixed groups of intelligence actually confound intelligence and allow for people to learn from each other, and kind of cement ideas. So that is how I conceptualized what we learned this week. And I think that tracking in and of itself is a method used to uphold the white supremacist nature of education and society. And so, in my opinion, there need not be any tracking in our educational systems. Have a great week.